Hey there! Are you an entrepreneur looking to start, launch, or grow a podcast? If you said yes, I am so happy you're here. I'm Kristen, a video and podcast producer and CEO of Novice Studios, a production company for podcasters. I help business owners launch and grow their podcasts to serve their audience, build community, and boost sales. I hope you'll subscribe to our show so we can help your show grow from novice to noteworthy. Hello, and welcome back to the Novice to Noteworthy podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about maintaining your podcast during a busy season. This is something I get questions about a lot as a podcast producer, and it's something that we run into with our own clients, kind of reaching vacation times or holiday times, or even just maybe something that they're going through in their personal life or childcare situations changing. There's so many different reasons why you might find yourself in a busy season in the middle of a podcast season, or if you have a weekly podcast, trying to figure out how to keep that momentum going without, or if you don't have time to sit down and batch record a ton of content. So in this episode, I'm going to share some quick tactical things that you can do to keep the show going while still honoring other things in your life that might be pulling you away from content creation. The first thing and the most important thing, maybe something that you would want to consider even when you're not in a busy season, is shortening the overall length of your episodes. If you feel like a podcast has to be 40 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour long in order to have all the content that you would need to make it a quote unquote good podcast episode, that's just not true. There is so much value still in shortening that down to more concise tips, getting to the point more quickly in the content that you're creating, or in general, avoiding these super long list style episodes. If you feel like you have to put at least 10 tips in an episode in order for it to be good, that's just not true. You can give your audience 3, 2, or even 1 really, really potent, actionable piece of advice or a tip or a tutorial, something like that, and make it juicy enough that they just need that one thing or 3 tips. But it doesn't need to be this super long, super in-depth piece of content in order for it to be valuable. People can't even really take action on 10 things all at once. That's super overwhelming. At the most, they're going to be able to focus on 3 things, but there's probably just going to be 1 out of that list of things that you give them that they're like, ooh, that really stuck out to me. That feels very doable. That feels like it's going to make the biggest impact. And they're just going to take action on that one thing. And that's still a ton of value, even if you gave them, 9 other tips. It's the one thing that they take away from it that is the most impactful. So figure out what's going to move the needle for your audience and really focus on that in the content. Try to get your content down to 20 minutes long, maybe even 15 or 10 minutes, depending on, again, your availability, your capacity to sit down and record. If you know that you only have 30 minutes a week to sit down and record a podcast episode and you need that content to last as long as possible, record 3 10-minute episodes in that time instead of 1 30-minute episode. Again, as long as that content is really, really potent and actionable, it's still going to provide a ton of value to your audience. Along those lines, also shorten your intros to the episodes. If in your workflow you record an interview and then you record your intro separately for that episode, make it shorter. Intros tend to be these long-winded recaps of the entire episode, almost like a TLDR, like too long, didn't read at the bottom of an email. And that's just not necessary. If you can, just give 3 super quick teaser words or phrases of things that you're going to cover. Also, put those in the title of your episode. Let your title be the teaser into the content, and let the intro stand to just provide any context that might have been missed in the episode, or that's going to help people get more value out of the episode. If you didn't have your guest kind of share their credentials or their background in the episode, which I think is fine, you might want to share that, this person is a registered dietitian. This person is a Nobel Prize winning physicist. I don't know. Whatever is going to make them stand out as an expert and give them credentials to let the rest of the episode kind of, have that more context, have more credibility for your audience and for your listeners. But make it super, super short. 30 seconds to a minute is perfect. If you are a podcast that relies on mainly solo episode content, it can take a lot of planning on your side of things to sit down, plan the topics, write your outlines, or even script it if you're somebody that scripts your full-length solo episodes. So for this busy season, switch to interview style formats. The preparation for those is reaching out to the guest and scheduling a time to record, writing the interview questions of what you want to ask that person. And if you're really pressed for time, you can even have a standard list of interview questions that you ask everybody, or, maybe a series that you do where you interview, as an example, let's say entrepreneurs about how they, hit that like overnight success mark that people talk about. And you have a set list of questions that you ask every person. Then your preparation is literally just getting people on the calendar to record with you. And you just ask them that list of questions. And again, keep them short. Keep that list of questions down to 3 to 5 really potent questions. Your guests will appreciate not having to block off like an hour to an hour and a half of time on their calendar. And they'll appreciate that you can knock out an interview in 15 to 20 minutes. It's going to make editing easier. The shorter that you keep your content, the faster it is to edit, generally speaking. The faster it'll be to listen through to write your show notes. Whatever your workflow is, when you're working with smaller bites of content, it's going to make the other pieces of your workflow go much faster as well. Another great way to get through a busy season and maintain your podcast with fresh content is to repurpose your old content. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but if you have a podcast that has at least like 30 to 50 episodes, chances are you've grown your audience in that time. Your newer episodes are getting more downloads than your older episodes. So you can take those older episodes, especially the ones that perform particularly well or that you got really great positive feedback on, and release those as new content. Now, there's 2 ways to do this. One is a high effort way to do this, and one is a very low effort way to do this. The high effort way is to create some best of episodes. These can take a while to produce if you don't already have an idea of, some batches of episodes that have similar themes. But basically what this is kind of taking 1 to 2 minute sound bites from a few different episodes and stringing them together with some music as a standalone episode. An example that I just did of these for a client was the client recorded an intro talking about the Supreme Court ruling over affirmative action, and we created a best of episode about some of their higher education episodes with presidents of colleges, heads of security for colleges, and people who worked at HBCUs. And we, took some sound bites from each of those episodes and put them together into one cohesive episode. This can take a while because you have to go back. You have to maybe listen to older episodes and string them together. So again, this is a very high effort, but can sound very high production value. The other much easier way, which if you are in a super busy season, this is what I would recommend, is to simply re-release old episodes in their entirety with maybe a new intro added to the beginning, again, just to add some context that maybe was missing from the full-length episode, or to kind of reflect on maybe how things have changed since you recorded that initial episode. This is actually a strategy that we've seen work really, really well with clients who want to take the month of December off from new episodes of their podcast. Obviously, December as a month, no matter how you celebrate or what you celebrate, it is a busy month for everybody. And so this particular client wanted to take that entire month off from recording new content. And so we re-released old episodes from her podcast, and each of them had like the most downloads from that year as a whole, right? And so for the intro, she said, this was the third most, number 3, we're counting down to the most downloaded episode of 2022, the third most listened to episode. We talk about XYZ, maybe sharing other things that guest that you had on, or in that solo episode, maybe sharing an extra tip to kind of add to it that you've learned since that episode came out, something like that, just to add a little bit of fresh new content to it, but you're not having to record an entire episode from scratch. You're just starting that intro to freshen it up a little bit. So hopefully you found this episode helpful if you're currently in a busy season, or you know you have an upcoming busy season, or you're planning for what you're going to do with your podcast during the holiday months when downloads generally tend to be lower because, again, people are super busy. They're not just too busy to create content, they're also too busy to consume content. So keeping that in mind, hopefully some of these tips help you to maintain your show during a busy season. If you have any other questions, of course, feel free to DM me on Instagram at Novice Studios CLT. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks, guys. That's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Written reviews are incredible, but even a quick 5-star review is so helpful for our show. You can also rate us on Spotify. If you listen over there, you can give us 5 stars over there as well. Be sure to follow us over on Instagram and YouTube at Novice Studios CLT and share the show with a fellow podcaster to spread the word. See you next time.